good morning, and welcome to Morning Joy Mental Notes. I am your host, Kenneth Joyner, aka TJ, and I'm excited about today's session. Excited about what we're going to be talking about. Today, we're going to be talking about relationships with others, or rather, navigating relationships with others. When we talk about relationships, that's going to be your intimate relationships, but as well as your friendships with others, family relationships. Just talk about ways that we can navigate relationships better. So we're able to receive people better, and we're also able to get people to possibly receive us in a better manner and just decrease frustration and those relational problems, so to speak. So I wanted to talk about this because I get a lot of people that come in with to me and they deal with a lot of stress, and a lot of that stress is surrounding their relationships with others and what others have done that may have frustrated them, or vice versa, what people say they've done that frustrate the other people. Right? So I wanted to talk about how we can start to navigate relationships better. Firstly, one of the biggest things for us to do is to basically put on the table what we expect from other people. A lot of times, our frustration and our disconnect comes from this view of what should be, but we haven't voiced that to whoever it is that we're dealing with. So if it's family members, if it's friends, if it's an intimate partner, then we haven't voiced fully what we're expecting from them, and then we're expecting them to know automatically, which is almost like asking somebody to read our mind, which we know is not possible. So one of the biggest things that we can start off doing to just help us navigate relationships is to express our expectations of said person. Right? So that's a two-part thing, because us expressing our expectation is one thing, and then two, us allowing the person to choose to commit to said thing, right? So it's almost like a contract. I tell people to look at it like a contractual agreement, like business. So if I have a friend and I say, hey, as a friend, I want you to be a person that I might can call and vent to when things are going bad. I want you to be a person that remembers my birthday and tells me happy birthday, right? If I'm expecting that from a friend, then me putting that on the table is the first step. And then the second step is saying, hey, is that something that you feel like you can do for me, right? And then giving them the freedom to choose yes or no, just like a business agreement. You wouldn't like if somebody was to say, hey, I'm going to make you take $200 out of your check and invest into this business proposition without you saying, I want to or don't want to, right? So it's the same thing with relationships, but because we grow up in this world where we feel like everybody has been exposed to certain things, so they should know, sometimes we can impose our expectations on a person and they haven't even agreed to it or don't even know that that expectation is on the table. So that's our first step, making sure that we give the person the opportunity to know what we're expecting from them, number one, and then giving them the opportunity to choose, right? And then if they say, no, that's something that I don't know that I can deal with, then the negotiation starts. And you can say, okay, what is it that you feel like a friend should do? And pretty much just putting down those ideas of what we expect. And this is big, again, in family relationships, but also in friendships, but it's real big in intimate relationships, right? Because we're working, ultimately, most of us are working towards possibly marriage, moving in together, and we talk about the idea of two becoming one. So in order for those two to become one, we have to know what the list of rules are on both of those two sheets of paper that are trying to come to one. So again, I charge you. The first charge would be to make sure that we're giving that sort of contractual agreement to said person. Now, the second thing that I wanted to put on the table for us to think about in relationships is to try to work towards not taking things personal. Now, that's a tough one because we have emotions, we have feelings, right? So when things happen, if a person gets upset, if a person gets distant, if a person is not doing the things that they were doing before, first thing I want you to do is to try your best to process it and not take it personal, because everybody is a ball of reactions that have come from everything that they've dealt with in their life. So when they're dealing with you, not only are they dealing with what is going on between you two, but they're also dealing with other things that have gone on in their life. So they're playing defense and they don't realize it. So they may be getting distant because something is becoming uncomfortable. And it might not have anything to do with you. So a lot of times when you're talking to somebody, I want you to look at it as if you're almost guaranteed to push a button on something that may have been there before you were there, right? So we can work through this thing by not taking it personal and trying to figure out what was going on. As we can see, a lot of this is basically a big part of communication, a big part of understanding the other person that you're dealing with, right? So these are 2 tips, and I want to continue with another tip, but we will have to take a break and let a song come for you all so you can just take some of this information in, and then we'll be back right after this song. All right, and we are back again, excited about just tips that can help us to navigate relationships with others. Again, that's family relationships, that's friendships, that's intimate relationships, even work relationships. All of these things can help you to become better in those spaces, right? So we talked about 2 tips. The first one was making sure that we express our expectations of others. Give them an opportunity to know what they're signing up for, and then giving them an opportunity to actually sign up and commit to said things, right? And then we can hold them to their word, and it won't be to something that we have an idea of that we haven't verbalized, right? And then the second tip was making sure that we try hard to not take things personal, because everything is a reaction of bigger things, if that makes sense. So if somebody yells, we can definitely communicate to them that we don't want to be yelled, but understanding that that means that something was hit that maybe have came before us, right? So those are 2 tips. The third tip that I wanted to point out is the big C word. We hear it all the time. People say communication is key. And communication is definitely key. When I say communication, I want to really dive in more and say expression, right? So telling what you're feeling as opposed to holding it in. Reason being is, again, because the person will not know if we don't let them know. But 2, because holding it in can cause for a more disruptive explosion later down the road, a more disruptive expression later down the road. If we hold things in, we tend to build resentment. And resentment will bring anger, resentment will bring frustration, and then before you know it, a smaller situation can bring those feelings to the forefront, and then we explode in a manner that's too big for that said situation, but it's because of all of this buildup and us not expressing ourselves. So expressing yourself is big, not only so the person can know where you're coming from, but so you can release yourself. A lot of our stress and a lot of our frustration comes from not feeling like we have a voice, right? So if we get in a situation where we don't have a voice, then we can build that stress, we can start to shut down, and we may not even realize that that's what's happening. Have you ever been in a situation and you're in a relationship or you have a friendship and it's going well? They call it the honeymoon phase. So it's going well. Everything is looking good, and then before you know it, it seems like every little thing is just making you upset about the person across from you. And it was stuff that you know wouldn't have bothered you before, but now it's starting to bother you. A lot of times that can come from that thing that we were just talking about, not communicating, not expressing yourself, not pretty much allowing your voice to be heard, not expanding your voice in the relationship. You start to just take things for what they are, and you're not being transparent, and you think you're doing right because you're trying to keep the peace, right? Which is good for the temporary moment, but it's good for you to make sure, again, that you're putting yourself in there and making sure that that person sees the whole you. They need to see your feelings, your emotions, and vice versa. And then y'all will be getting the full versions of yourselves, but you'll also be able to connect to the full versions of yourself, right? You're not going to be loving the representative of the person, and they're not going to be loving the representative of you, which makes for a stronger and healthier relationship long term. Now, I will say it can be tough when you're starting to give that communication more, leeway in your life. It can start to get tough, but it's part of the process. Nothing worth having is easy, right? So it's part of the process, but picking your mate, y'all are building. So being able to challenge them to communicate, challenge them to be able to allow you to communicate, and vice versa is going to be a big part of your foundation. So again, those 3 tips, I want to run them back real fast for us. Those 3 tips to navigate in relationships with others is going to be to make sure that you express your expectations that you have, and then allow a person to receive and choose. And then the second one is going to be not to take things personally. And the third one is going to be to communicate, right? So we will wrap it up there with that information. And again, I just want to let you know that I enjoy coming with y'all. I am Kenneth Joyner. Again, I have a private practice over in Greenville, North Carolina. I am a mental health therapist by trade. And if you need to get in touch with me, you can reach me online at www.therapeuticinteractions.com, which is spelled THERAPEUTICINteractions. And I enjoyed being with you today. I look forward to seeing you again in a month. And make sure you take those tips and begin to evolve into the next level of the version that you already are.